Captain Marcus Chen had seen many strange things during his 15 years exploring the outer rim of known space. Giant crystal formations that sang haunting melodies, gas clouds that shifted colors like living rainbows, ancient ruins of civilizations that had vanished millions of years ago. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. The massive ship that hung before his small research vessel looked like it was carved from a single piece of midnight blue crystal. It stretched for miles in every direction, dwarfing his ship like a mountain next to a pebble. Elegant curves and flowing lines made it look more like a work of art than a spacecraft. Golden lights pulsed along its surface in patterns that seemed almost like a heartbeat. "This is impossible," whispered Dr. Sarah Kim, his science officer, staring at the readings on her screen. "The energy signatures are off the charts. This ship could power Earth's entire grid for 1,000 years. Marcus gripped the armrests of his captain's chair as the alien vessel's tractor beam locked onto them. He had tried everything to break free, but their engines might as well have been paper airplanes against a hurricane. The beam was pulling them toward what looked like a hangar bay that had just opened in the crystal ship's side. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," reported Lieutenant Torres from the communication station. It's in perfect English. Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was melodic and commanding, with an accent Marcus couldn't place. It sounded ancient and regal, like someone used to being obeyed without question. "Human vessel, you will dock in Bay 7 immediately. Any attempt to resist or escape will be futile. Your ship's weapon systems have been disabled, and your engines are now under our control." Marcus activated the comm system. "This is Captain Marcus Chen of the Earth research vessel Pioneer. We are peaceful explorers on a scientific mission. We mean no harm and request safe passage through your space." Silence stretched for long seconds before the voice responded, and Marcus could hear what sounded like amused laughter. "Your protests have been noted and dismissed, human. You will comply." The tractor beam guided their ship through the hangar bay opening. As they passed through what looked like a shimmering energy field, Marcus felt a strange tingling sensation wash over him. The bay was enormous, easily large enough to hold 50 ships the size of the Pioneer. But theirs was the only vessel present. Graceful alien figures moved across the deck below, their movements flowing like dancers. They were tall and slender, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the golden light. As the Pioneer settled onto the deck with barely a bump, Marcus could see that their captors were humanoid, but clearly not human. "Captain," Dr. Kim said quietly, checking her instruments. "The atmosphere out there is perfectly breathable for humans. Temperature is comfortable. It's almost like they prepared for our arrival." "That's what worries me," Marcus replied. "How did they know we were coming when we didn't even know ourselves?" Heavy footsteps echoed through the ship as something large approached their airlock. The sound was rhythmic and deliberate, like a formal procession. Marcus straightened his uniform and checked his sidearm, though he suspected it would be useless against technology this advanced. "Stay calm, everyone," he told his crew of 12. "Follow my lead and remember we're representatives of Earth. Whatever happens, we conduct ourselves with dignity." The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and Marcus stepped forward to face whatever awaited them. The corridor beyond was breathtaking, with walls that seemed to be made of living light. Crystalline formations grew from the floor and ceiling like frozen waterfalls, and the air itself seemed to sparkle with tiny motes of energy. A group of the blue-skinned aliens stood waiting for them. They wore flowing robes that shifted color as they moved, and their large eyes held an intelligence that was both beautiful and unsettling. But it was the figure at their center that made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. She was clearly their leader, standing a head taller than the others. Her skin had a more pronounced shimmer, and her robes were deep purple with threads of actual light woven through them. Her hair was long and silver, floating around her shoulders as if she were underwater, but it was her eyes that commanded attention. They were the color of deep space, dark blue with flecks of stars that seemed to move and swirl. She was, Marcus had to admit, the most beautiful being he had ever seen. And the most terrifying. "I am Princess Lyrelai of the Asterian Empire," she said, her voice carrying easily through the corridor. "You have entered our territory without permission, human. Your ship and your crew are now property of the Crown." Marcus stepped forward, keeping his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Princess, with respect, we had no way of knowing this was your territory. Our star charts show this region as unexplored space. We request permission to leave peacefully." The princess moved closer, and Marcus could see that she was studying him with the intensity of a scientist examining a new specimen. Her guards remained perfectly still, but he could sense their readiness to act at the slightest provocation. "Do not bother protesting, human. You are mine now," she said, and there was something in her tone that made Marcus's spine straighten. It wasn't cruelty exactly, but absolute certainty, as if the idea that he might refuse or escape had never occurred to her. "My name is Captain Marcus Chen," he said firmly, "and my crew and I are citizens of Earth. We have rights under interstellar law." Princess Lirelei tilted her head, and for a moment Marcus thought he saw surprise flicker across her features. Then she smiled, and it was like watching a star being born. "Interstellar law?" she repeated. "How delightfully naive. There is only one law in this galaxy, human Marcus Chen. The law of power, and I have power beyond your comprehension." As if to demonstrate her point, she raised one elegant hand. The walls around them began to glow brighter, and Marcus felt a pressure in the air that made his ears pop. His crew shifted nervously behind him, but he forced himself to stand firm. "Perhaps," he said carefully, "but even the most powerful beings can benefit from diplomacy. What do you want from us?" The princess lowered her hand and the pressure faded. She continued to study him with those mesmerizing eyes, and Marcus had the uncomfortable feeling that she was seeing straight through to his soul. "What I want, Captain Chen, is to understand what makes humans so special. Your species has a reputation in certain circles. Some call you dangerous, others call you remarkable. I intend to discover which assessment is correct." She turned and began walking down the corridor, her robes flowing behind her like liquid starlight. Her guards gestured for Marcus and his crew to follow. "Come," she called without looking back. "Your education begins now." The corridors of the Asterian ship seemed to go on forever. Marcus and his crew followed Princess Lirelei through passages that twisted and curved, like the inside of a seashell. The walls were alive with moving patterns of light, and sometimes Marcus could swear he heard distant music, like whale songs mixed with wind chimes. "Stay together," he whispered to his crew. Dr. Kim walked beside him, her scientific mind clearly fascinated despite their predicament. Lieutenant Torres kept glancing at the guards, probably calculating their chances in a fight. Marcus didn't need to calculate. They had no chance at all. The princess led them into a vast chamber that took Marcus's breath away. The ceiling was transparent, showing the starfield outside, but somehow the space felt warm and inviting. Gardens grew in impossible spirals up the walls, with plants that glowed softly in colors he had no names for. Water flowed in streams that defied gravity, creating waterfalls that fell upward and fountains that sprayed sideways. "Welcome to my personal sanctuary," Princess Lirelei said, settling gracefully onto what looked like a throne made of crystallized moonlight. "Here we may speak freely without the formalities of court." Marcus noticed that chairs had appeared, literally materialized from the floor, for him and his crew. The technology was so advanced it seemed like magic. He remained standing. "Princess, I need to ask about my crew's welfare. They need food, water, rest. Whatever you want from me, they shouldn't suffer for it." Something flickered in those star-like eyes. "You speak for your subordinates before yourself. Interesting. Most beings in your position would be concerned with their own survival." "That's what leaders do," Marcus said simply. "We take care of our people. Even when those people cannot help you? Even when caring for them puts you at greater risk?" The princess leaned forward, genuinely curious. "Your science officer is elderly. Your communications officer is injured from your ship's rough landing. They slow you down, make escape more difficult, yet you worry about their comfort before your own freedom." Dr. Kim bristled at being called elderly, but Marcus raised a hand to keep her quiet. "Princess, with respect, you don't understand humans if you think we'd abandon our friends to save ourselves." "No," Lirelei said softly. "I do not understand. That is why you interest me." She gestured, and suddenly the air filled with holographic images. Marcus saw scenes of space battles, planets in flames, entire star systems being consumed by massive machines. The images were beautiful and terrible, showing the rise and fall of civilizations across the galaxy. "For 10,000 years my people have ruled this region of space," the princess explained. "We have seen species rise to greatness and fall to ruin. We have watched empires crumble and new ones take their place. In all that time we have learned one constant truth about intelligent life." The images shifted, showing various alien species. Some looked like giant insects, others like living plants or crystalline beings. All of them seemed to share one trait. They looked either predatory or prey-like, but not both. Every species we have encountered follows the same pattern. They are either conquerors or victims, hunters or hunted. The strong dominate the weak, and the weak serve or die. It is the natural order of the universe. Marcus felt a chill as he began to understand where this was going. But humans are different. Yes. The word carried weight, as if the princess was admitting something that disturbed her. 3 cycles ago, we first heard reports of your species from traders at the galactic rim. The stories were contradictory. New images appeared showing human settlements on distant worlds. Marcus recognized some of them from Earth's early colony reports. What he saw made his chest tighten with pride and worry. Your people build cities on worlds that should kill them, Lyrale continued. You terraformed planets that others declared uninhabitable. You survive in environments that would destroy species with far superior technology, but that alone did not make you unique. The scenes changed to show humans in various situations, rescue operations during disasters, medical teams treating alien refugees, human soldiers defending colonies not their own. What makes you unique is that you are simultaneously the most dangerous and most compassionate species we have ever encountered. You wage war with a ferocity that terrifies seasoned conquerors, yet you also risk your lives to save strangers who can offer you nothing in return. Marcus watched his species through alien eyes and felt a complex mix of emotions, pride at what humans had accomplished, but also sadness at what they had done. Our intelligence networks have documented humans diving into acid seas to rescue crashed alien pilots. We have records of human colonies sharing their last food supplies with shipwrecked travelers from species that had previously attacked them. You fight like demons when threatened, but you also show mercy to defeated enemies. Princess Lyrale stood and walked to one of the impossible waterfalls, letting the upward-flowing water run through her fingers. This should not be possible. Evolution should not produce beings capable of such contradictions. Yet here you are. Maybe, Marcus said carefully, evolution on Earth taught us that cooperation and competition are both necessary for survival. We learned that sometimes you have to fight, and sometimes you have to help each other. Both strategies work depending on the situation. Perhaps, but there is more. The princess turned back to him and her expression was troubled. 6 months ago, one of our scout ships encountered a human vessel in the Kepler sector. The humans were badly damaged, their life support failing. Our captain offered assistance. Marcus felt his throat tighten. What happened? The humans accepted our help gratefully. They shared their food with our crew, told stories of their homeworld, treated our wounded when an accident occurred during repairs. When the rescue was complete, they offered our captain a gift, a small device containing music from Earth. The princess waved her hand, and the chamber filled with the sound of human voices singing. Marcus recognized it immediately. Amazing Grace, performed by a gospel choir. The harmony was so beautiful it brought tears to his eyes. Our captain was moved by this gesture. He reported that the humans seemed genuinely grateful for help from strangers, not calculating or suspicious, but openly emotional. He said their joy and relief were infectious. Lyrale's voice dropped to almost a whisper. That captain was my brother. He returned to our homeworld changed by that encounter. He began questioning our traditional ways, suggesting that perhaps there were alternatives to conquest and dominance. He gathered followers among our younger citizens. Marcus began to understand. Your people saw this as a threat. My father, the emperor, saw it as corruption. He believed your species was somehow poisoning our people's minds with dangerous ideas about cooperation and equality. He ordered all contact with humans to be severed. But you brought us here anyway. The princess met his eyes and Marcus saw something unexpected there. Uncertainty. I need to understand what my brother experienced. I need to know if humans truly are as unique as the reports suggest or if you are simply very skilled manipulators. And if we are unique, then my people's entire worldview may be wrong. 10,000 years of tradition and belief would crumble. The implications would be, she paused, searching for words, catastrophic. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders, not just for his crew, but potentially for the future relationship between humanity and a galactic empire. What exactly do you want from us? Princess Lyrale returned to her throne, but her posture was less regal now, more like someone seeking answers to impossible questions. I want you to prove to me that humans are not a threat to the natural order. Show me that your compassion is not weakness, that your cooperation is not manipulation. Convince me that my brother was not corrupted but enlightened. And if we can't, the star-like eyes hardened, then you and your crew will serve as examples to discourage other humans from venturing into Asterian space. Your ship will be destroyed, and word will be sent to your homeworld that this region of the galaxy is forbidden to your kind. Marcus felt his crew's tension spike behind him, but he kept his voice calm. That sounds like a threat, Princess. It is a promise, Captain Chen, but I am not without fairness. You will have time to demonstrate your true nature. Consider it a test. What kind of test? Princess Lyrelei smiled, and it was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Tomorrow you will accompany me to the planet Zarian. There you will face the same challenges my brother encountered with your people. How you respond will determine not just your fate, but the fate of human-Asterian relations for generations to come. Marcus spent the night in quarters that were more luxurious than any hotel he had ever seen. The room seemed to read his mind, adjusting temperature, lighting, and even the firmness of the bed to his preferences. A window showed the infinite stars outside, but he found little comfort in the familiar sight. Tomorrow would determine whether humanity had a future in this part of the galaxy. When morning came, though time had little meaning on an alien ship, Princess Lyrelei arrived to escort him personally. She wore simpler clothes today, practical garments that still managed to look elegant. Her guard contingent was smaller, just 2 warriors who moved like deadly shadows. Your crew will remain aboard my ship, she informed him, as they walked toward what he assumed was a shuttle bay. They will be treated well, but they are insurance for your cooperation. I understand, Marcus replied. But I want to see them before we leave. The princess nodded approvingly. Another example of your concern for subordinates. Very well. His crew was housed in a common area that looked like a high-end resort lounge. They were clean, fed, and appeared to be in good health, though Lieutenant Torres had the coiled tension of a soldier forced to wait. Dr. Kim was studying an alien device with fascination, probably learning more about Asterian technology than she had any right to. Captain, Dr. Kim approached him with obvious relief. Are you all right? Where are you going? I'm fine, Sarah. The princess is taking me to see something that might help our situation. Keep everyone together and stay calm. I'll be back soon. He hoped that was true. The shuttle was unlike anything in human design philosophy. Instead of harsh angles and functional surfaces, every line flowed like water. The princess piloted it herself, her hands dancing over controls that responded to touch like living things. As they descended toward the planet Zarion, Marcus got his first clear look at their destination. The world was beautiful and terrible. Vast cities of crystal spires reached toward the sky, connected by bridges that seemed to be made of hardened light. But between the cities, Marcus could see darker areas, regions where the land looked scarred and empty. The contrast was jarring, like seeing paradise and wasteland existing side by side. The Asterian colonies, Princess Lyrelei explained, following his gaze. My people have lived here for 3,000 years. We have brought order and prosperity to this world. What about the empty areas? The previous inhabitants proved difficult to integrate into civilized society. They were relocated. Marcus felt a chill at her casual tone. Relocated where? To areas more suitable for their primitive lifestyle. They landed in a spaceport that bustled with activity. Marcus saw dozens of different alien species moving about their business, but he noticed something troubling. The Asterians moved freely through elevated walkways and used the best facilities. Other species stayed on ground level, using entrances that were clearly marked as secondary. It was a subtle but unmistakable hierarchy. Come, the princess said, leading him toward a transport that hovered a few feet off the ground. I want to show you how we maintain peace and stability. The transport carried them through the Crystal City at high speed. Marcus saw magnificent architecture, parks filled with impossible plants, and what looked like universities where young Asterians studied advanced sciences. It was undeniably impressive, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. They stopped at a massive amphitheater where thousands of beings were gathered. Most were not Asterian. Marcus saw dozens of species, some familiar from Earth's first contact databases, others completely unknown. They all sat in organized sections with clear barriers between different groups. A judicial proceeding, Princess Lyrelei explained as they took seats in an elevated box overlooking the arena. Today we resolve disputes and maintain order among the various species under our protection. Marcus watched as cases were presented. A trade dispute between two merchant species. A boundary disagreement between agricultural settlements. Resource allocation for mining operations. In each case, an Asterian judge listened to arguments and made decisions. The ruling seemed fair on the surface, but Marcus noticed a pattern. When disputes were between non-Asterian species, the rulings usually favored whoever could provide more benefit to the Asterian Empire. Trade rights, mining quotas, manufacturing contracts, everything was decided based on what best served the dominant species. The affected aliens accepted these judgments without protest, but Marcus could see the resignation in their postures. Your people maintain order through economic control, he observed quietly. We maintain order through superior wisdom and organization, the princess corrected. Lesser species benefit from our guidance. Lesser species? Princess Lyrily looked at him with genuine confusion. Of course, some species are naturally more advanced than others. It is our responsibility to guide those who cannot guide themselves. Before Marcus could respond, a commotion broke out in the arena below. A group of beings that looked like humanoid wolves had apparently violated some regulation. Asterian guards moved in smoothly, using energy weapons to subdue the protesters without killing them. The efficiency was impressive and horrifying. They will be retrained, the princess said calmly. Their pack mentality makes them valuable workers, but they sometimes forget their place in the social order. Marcus felt sick. You're talking about sentient beings like they're animals. They are animals, Captain Chen. Intelligent animals, yes, but animals nonetheless. We do not mistreat them. They are fed, housed, given productive work. Many species thrive under our care far better than they did in their natural state. But they're not free. The princess turned to study him intently. Freedom is an abstract concept, Captain. What matters is stability, productivity, and the greater good. These species are part of something larger than themselves now. They contribute to a galactic civilization that has lasted 10,000 years. Marcus watched as the wolf-like beings were led away. They didn't fight anymore, but he could see the defeat in their eyes. What happened to their homeworld? Integrated into the Empire, naturally. The planet now produces food for 17 star systems, much more efficient than when they used it for hunting grounds and tribal territories. And the ones who didn't want to be integrated? Princess Lyrily was quiet for a long moment. There were regrettable casualties during the transition period. But that was centuries ago. The survivors adapted. Marcus felt anger building in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. Getting emotional wouldn't help his crew or humanity's future. Princess, may I ask you something? Of course. What makes Asterians different from these other species? Why are you the ones in charge? She seemed surprised by the question. We are the most advanced. Our technology, our social organization, our understanding of the universe. We evolved to lead while others evolved to follow. It is the natural order. But what if that's wrong? What if the reason you're in charge is just because you were the first to develop faster than light travel in this region? What if it's circumstance, not natural superiority? The princess stood abruptly, her composure cracking slightly. You sound like my brother. He began asking the same dangerous questions after his encounter with your people. Maybe they're not dangerous questions. Maybe they're necessary ones. Come. She gestured sharply toward the exit. I want to show you something else. They traveled to the outskirts of the city, where the crystal spires gave way to simpler structures. Here Marcus saw the other side of Asterian society. Aliens lived in functional but basic housing, working in factories and farms that fed the Empire. There was no obvious cruelty, no signs of starvation or abuse, but there was also no sign of choice or self-determination. These beings live better lives than their ancestors could have imagined, Princess Lyrily said as they watched a group of insectoid workers tending vast hydroponic farms. They have guaranteed food, shelter, medical care, and purpose. What more could they want? The right to choose their own purpose, Marcus replied. The chance to fail or succeed on their own terms. The dignity of making their own mistakes. And if their choices lead to war, famine, the collapse of civilization, Marcus thought of Earth's history, the wars, the injustices, the times humanity had nearly destroyed itself, but also the art, the exploration, the moments of transcendent beauty that came from freedom to create and choose. Then that's their right too, he said finally. Freedom includes the freedom to fail, Princess Lirelai stared at him for a long time, her star-like eyes unreadable. Your people truly believe this? Most of us, yes. Even though it means more suffering? More chaos? Even then. She turned away, looking out over the ordered perfection of her people's empire. When she spoke again, her voice was very quiet. My brother said something similar. He claimed that true strength came not from controlling others, but from helping them control themselves. She paused. My father considered it the most dangerous heresy ever spoken in our court. Marcus felt they were approaching a critical moment. What do you consider it? The princess was silent for so long that Marcus wondered if she would answer. When she finally spoke, her words sent a chill through him. I consider it the most terrifying possibility I have ever contemplated. Because if my brother was right, then... That evening, Princess Lirelai brought Marcus to a place he hadn't expected. A memorial garden hidden deep within the Crystal City. The space was quiet and somber, filled with monuments to fallen Asterian heroes. But it was the newest memorial that drew his attention. The monument was different from the others. Instead of celebrating conquest or dominance, it showed an Asterian figure reaching out to help smaller figures of various alien species. The inscription was in Asterian script, but the princess translated it for him. Here lies Prince Valdris, son of the Emperor, brother to Princess Lirelai. He died believing that strength should serve wisdom, and wisdom should serve compassion. Marcus felt the weight of her words. Your brother is dead? Executed for treason 6 months ago, she said quietly. 3 days after I ordered his arrest. The admission hung in the air between them like a physical presence. Marcus could see the pain in her eyes, carefully hidden but unmistakably there. You arrested your own brother? It was my duty as heir to the throne. He was spreading dangerous ideas, questioning the foundation of our society. His followers were growing in number, especially among the younger generation. My father commanded that the movement be stopped before it could destabilize the empire. Marcus studied the memorial more carefully. The craftsmanship was exquisite. But more than that, it was infused with genuine love and grief. You built this for him? In secret, yes. My father doesn't know it exists. Princess Lirelai touched the base of the monument gently. Valdris was 3 years older than me. He taught me to pilot spacecraft, to appreciate art, to think beyond our world's boundaries. He was everything I hoped to become. What changed him? What made him start questioning your people's ways? The encounter with your species that I told you about? But it wasn't just the humans he met on that rescue mission. It was the recordings they shared with him. She gestured, and a holographic display materialized above the memorial. Marcus saw images he recognized, scenes from Earth's history. The founding of the United Nations, the international response to natural disasters, humans of different races and nations working together on space stations and colonies. Your people's history is full of conflict, the princess continued. Wars that devastated continents, ideologies that led to genocide, mistakes that cost millions of lives. By our standards, humanity should have destroyed itself long ago. But we didn't. No, you didn't. And Valdris became obsessed with understanding why. He studied every piece of human history and culture he could find. He learned about your concepts of individual rights, democratic governance, and voluntary cooperation, ideas that are completely alien to Asterian thinking. Marcus watched the images shift to show more recent human achievements. The terraforming of Mars, the first peaceful contact with the Centaurian Alliance, human peacekeepers helping to resolve conflicts between alien species on the frontier worlds. Your brother saw something in humanity that scared your father. He saw an alternative, Princess Lirelai said. A way of organizing society that didn't depend on the strong dominating the weak. He believed that if other species could see human examples of cooperation and equality, they might start demanding the same freedoms for themselves, and that would threaten Asterian control. It would destroy everything we've built. 10,000 years of order and stability would collapse into chaos. She turned to face him directly, or so my father believes. Valdris thought it would lead to something better. A true galactic civilization based on mutual respect rather than fear. Marcus felt the complexity of the situation settling on his shoulders. What do you believe? I don't know, she admitted, and her voice carried a vulnerability he hadn't heard before. That's why you're here. I need to understand if my brother died for a noble dream or a dangerous delusion. They were interrupted by the arrival of one of her guards, who approached with obvious urgency. He spoke in rapid Asterian, but Marcus could read the tension in his body language. The princess's expression darkened as she listened. "What is it?" Marcus asked. "Trouble in the outer settlements. One of the subject species has apparently been infected by ideas similar to my brother's. They're demanding what they call self-governance rights. My father has ordered a full military response." Marcus felt his blood chill. "What does that mean?" "It means the orbital bombardment platforms are being activated. The entire settlement will be destroyed as an example to others." Her voice was steady, but Marcus could see the conflict in her eyes. It's standard procedure for dealing with rebellion. "How many beings live in that settlement?" "Approximately 50,000. The number hit Marcus like a physical blow. 50,000 sentient lives about to be extinguished to maintain political control. He thought of his crew back on the ship, of Earth, of all the human colonies that could face the same fate if this went wrong. "Princess, you have to stop this. I have no authority to countermand my father's orders, and even if I did, interfering would be seen as proof that I've been corrupted by human ideas. I would face the same fate as my brother." Marcus grabbed her arm, then immediately released it when her guards tensed. "I'm sorry, but listen to me. This is exactly what your brother was talking about. This is why human ideas are spreading, because they offer hope to people who have none. If you destroy that settlement, you'll create 50,000 martyrs. Their story will spread to every world in your empire. And what would you have me do? Allow rebellion to spread unchecked? Find another way. Show mercy. Prove that the Asterian Empire can be just as well as strong." Princess Lyra Lee stared at him for a long moment, then turned to her guard and spoke rapidly in Asterian. The guard looked surprised but bowed and activated a communication device. Marcus heard a brief conversation but couldn't understand the words. "I've ordered the bombardment delayed pending my personal investigation," she said finally. "I can buy perhaps 6 hours before my father overrules me." "Thank you. Don't thank me yet, human. We're going to that settlement and you're going to help me resolve this situation. If you can prove that human methods can work without destroying order, perhaps there's hope for both our species. If not," she didn't need to finish the sentence. Marcus understood perfectly. This was the test he'd been waiting for, and the stakes couldn't be higher. They returned to the spaceport quickly, the princess's shuttle already being prepared for departure. As they lifted off toward the troubled settlement, Marcus tried to process what he was walking into. A rebellion that could justify genocide, or a peaceful protest that might change the course of galactic history. "Tell me about these rebels," he said as they flew through Zarian's atmosphere. "They call themselves the Kythera, silicon-based lifeforms very long-lived. They've been part of the Empire for nearly 2,000 years, working primarily as architects and engineers. Until recently, they were considered one of our most compliant species. What changed? 3 months ago, one of their engineers was part of a trade delegation that visited a human colony in the neutral zone. When he returned, he began sharing stories about human cities where different species worked together as equals, where decisions were made by democratic councils rather than imperial decree. Marcus could see how that might be appealing to a species of builders and planners, and now they want the same thing. They've declared their primary settlement an autonomous zone and are refusing to follow imperial labor directives. They want to choose their own projects and set their own schedules. They're even demanding representation in regional governance councils. It sounded remarkably reasonable to Marcus, but he could understand how it would terrify an empire built on absolute control. Have they been violent? No. That's part of what makes this so dangerous. They're using purely passive resistance. They simply refuse to comply with orders. Other species are watching to see how we respond. As they approached the settlement, Marcus could see the problem immediately. The Kythera city was a masterpiece of architecture, with crystalline spires that sang in the wind and bridges that seemed to grow naturally from the landscape. But surrounding it were imperial military forces, enough firepower to level mountains. "Princess," Marcus said carefully, "I need you to understand something. If we go down there and try to solve this through force or intimidation, it will fail. These people have already decided they'd rather die than continue living without freedom. The only way to resolve this is to listen to them. Listen to rebels? That's not how the Empire maintains order. Maybe it's time for a new kind of order." Princess Lyra Lee was quiet for a long time as they descended toward the landing field. Finally, she spoke without looking at him. "My brother used to say something similar. He claimed that true order came from justice, not fear." She paused. "I'm about to find out if he was right." The Kythera settlement was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. The beings themselves were tall and graceful, their silicon-based bodies reflecting light like living prisms. Their city seemed to grow from the landscape itself, with structures that sang softly in harmony with the wind. Despite being surrounded by Imperial forces, the settlement hummed with purposeful activity. Princess Lyrelei landed their shuttle in a field between the city and the military perimeter. As they disembarked, Marcus could feel the tension in the air like electricity before a storm. Imperial soldiers watched from their positions while Kythera citizens observed from their crystal towers. "Remember," the princess said quietly, "I am here in an official capacity. Any sign of weakness, any indication that I'm sympathizing with rebels and my father will have justification to remove me from the succession. This could destroy both our futures." Marcus nodded, understanding the impossible position she was in. "I'll follow your lead." They were met by a delegation of 3 Kythera, led by an elderly individual whose crystal body had taken on a deep amber hue with age. When he spoke, his voice resonated like music played on glass instruments. "Princess Lyrelei, I am Elder Crystallis, speaker for the Autonomous Council of New Kythera. We are honored by your presence, though we regret the circumstances." "Elder Crystallis," the princess replied formally, "I come to understand why you have chosen to defy imperial authority. Surely you realize this path leads only to destruction." "We realize, Your Highness, that some things are worth more than mere survival. We have lived for 2,000 years as subjects. We wish to spend whatever time remains to us as beings with dignity and choice." Marcus watched the exchange carefully. He could see that Princess Lyrelei was struggling with concepts that challenged everything she'd been taught. The idea that beings would choose death over subjugation was clearly foreign to her worldview. "May I ask?" Marcus interjected carefully. "What specific changes you're seeking? What would constitute acceptable autonomy?" Elder Crystallis turned his attention to the human, and Marcus felt like he was being evaluated by an ancient intelligence. "You are the human we have heard about, the one whose people have shown there are alternatives to the imperial way. I'm Captain Marcus Chen of Earth. I'm here to try to understand both sides of the situation. Then listen well, human Marcus Chen. We do not seek to destroy the Asterian Empire or harm our imperial neighbors. We seek only the right to govern ourselves as we see fit, to choose our own leaders, set our own priorities, and trade freely with whoever offers fair exchange." Princess Lyrelei stepped forward. "Elder, you speak of choices, but you ignore responsibilities. The Empire provides protection, infrastructure, trade networks. Your autonomous zone would be vulnerable to attack, economically isolated, technologically stagnant. With respect, Your Highness, we have been the architects of most imperial infrastructure in this sector. We built the trade networks you speak of. As for protection," the elder gestured toward the military forces surrounding them, "from whom are you protecting us? The only threat we face comes from those who claim to be our protectors." Marcus could see the logic hitting the princess like a physical blow. The Kythera weren't helpless, primitives who needed imperial guidance. They were skilled beings, who had been forced to use their talents solely for imperial benefit. But without central coordination, she argued, there would be chaos, different species pursuing conflicting goals, competition for resources, inevitable conflict. As opposed to the current system, Elder Crystallis replied, where all species serve Asterian goals, all resources flow to Asterian worlds, and conflict is prevented only through the threat of annihilation. Another Kythera stepped forward, younger than the elder but still ancient by human standards. "Princess, may I show you something? Perhaps it will help you understand our perspective." The princess nodded reluctantly, and the young Kythera led them toward one of the singing towers. As they climbed a spiral ramp that wound around the structure's exterior, Marcus marveled at the engineering. The entire building was a single crystal, grown rather than constructed, with resonant chambers that created music from the wind. "This tower took my grandmother 50 years to grow," the Kythera explained. "She designed it to harmonize with the natural wind patterns of this location. It serves as both a home for 12 families and a communication hub for the entire settlement. Under imperial directives, she would have been required to build standardized housing units that could be replicated across the empire." They reached a viewing platform near the top, and Marcus gasped at the sight that greeted them. The entire settlement was visible from here, and he could see that every building was unique, each one designed to work in harmony with its neighbors and the environment. It was architecture as art, engineering as expression. "Your grandmother was an artist," Princess Lyralee said softly. "She was an engineer who was allowed to be an artist," the young Kythera corrected. "She died 3 years ago, but not before seeing her great work reduced to standardized patterns for imperial housing projects. Her unique techniques were copied, simplified, and mass-produced without her consent or compensation." Marcus saw the princess's hands clench at her sides. "The Empire needs efficient solutions for housing millions of beings across hundreds of worlds. But at what cost?" Elder Crystallis had followed them up the tower. "When you reduce art to mere function, when you strip away individual creativity and cultural expression, what kind of civilization are you building?" The elder gestured toward the imperial military forces below. "Those soldiers live in identical barracks, eat identical food, follow identical routines. They are efficient, predictable, controllable. But are they truly alive?" Princess Lyralee was quiet for a long moment, staring out over the crystal city. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible above the tower's song. "My brother asked me the same question once. He said that the price of perfect order might be the death of the spirit." She turned to face the Kythera. "But without order there is chaos. Without hierarchy there is conflict. How do you propose to prevent the galaxy from tearing itself apart?" "The same way your brother believed it could be done," Elder Crystallis replied. "Through cooperation freely given rather than obedience demanded. Through diversity that strengthens rather than uniformity that weakens." The elder moved to another side of the platform and pointed toward a section of the city that looked different from the rest. 3 months ago, a group of refugee Zephyrians arrived at our settlement. Their homeworld had been stripped of resources for an imperial mining operation, and they had nowhere else to go. Marcus could see the area the elder indicated. The architecture was clearly different, more organic with flowing curves that seemed to dance in the wind. But somehow it harmonized perfectly with the crystalline Kythera structures. Under imperial law, we should have reported them for relocation to an appropriate refugee processing facility. Instead, we offered them sanctuary. They brought their own architectural traditions, their own artistic vision. Together, we created something neither of our species could have achieved alone. Princess Lyralee studied the mixed architecture with obvious fascination. "It's beautiful, but surely this is just a single example. You can't extrapolate from one success to an entire galactic policy." "Can't we?" Another voice joined the conversation, and Marcus turned to see a new figure approaching. This one was clearly not Kythera. Its body was more fluid, almost gaseous, contained within a mobile environmental suit. "Princess Lyralee," Elder Crystallis said, "may I present Ambassador Whisperwind of the Zephyrian refugees?" The princess stiffened. "Zephyrians are classified as technologically primitive. They lack the social development for diplomatic status. With respect, Your Highness," Whisperwind's voice was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "We lack the desire to conquer other species. This does not make us primitive." Marcus saw an opportunity to bridge the gap. "Ambassador, could you tell us about your people's experience with cooperation versus control?" "Gladly, Captain Chen. On our homeworld, we lived in harmony with 17 other species. Each contributed according to their abilities. We Zephyrians controlled weather patterns. The stone shapers built cities. The plant speakers maintained ecosystems. No single species dominated because no single species had all the necessary skills for planetary civilization." "What happened?" Princess Lyralee asked, though Marcus suspected she already knew. "Imperial efficiency," Whisperwind replied sadly. "Your people arrived and determined that weather control was the most valuable resource our planet offered. My people were relocated to designated areas where we could focus entirely on atmospheric management. The other species were similarly categorized and isolated based on their primary utility to the Empire. The result," Elder Crystallis added, "was a 300% increase in agricultural output and a complete collapse of the planetary ecosystem within 20 years. Princess Lyralee closed her eyes. "The Zephyr system is listed as a major Imperial success story." "Success for whom?" Whisperwind asked gently. "Your people gained valuable resources and strategic territory. My people gained extinction." The emergency council meeting took place in the resonating chamber at the heart of the Kythera city. Marcus found himself at the center of a discussion that could reshape galactic civilization or get everyone in the room executed for treason. Representatives from 6 different species sat around a crystalline table that seemed to grow from the floor itself. Besides the Kythera and Zephyrians, there were delegates from mining collectives, agricultural cooperatives, and trading guilds, all species that had been classified as subject peoples under imperial law. Princess Lirelei sat at Marcus's right side, her royal composure intact but her eyes betraying deep uncertainty. Every few minutes she would receive updates from her personal guard about the military situation outside. The imperial forces were growing restless and her father's patience was wearing thin. The proposal is simple in concept, but revolutionary in practice, Elder Crystallis explained, his crystalline voice filling the chamber with harmonious overtones. A voluntary cooperative zone where multiple species can govern themselves through consensual agreement rather than imperial decree. But how would it work practically? Asked Coordinator Threx, a representative of the silicon miners whose people had been stripped of their homeworld's resources over the past century. How do you resolve disputes between species with completely different needs and perspectives? Marcus leaned forward. On Earth, we've developed systems for exactly this kind of challenge. Democratic councils with proportional representation, mediation services for conflicts, and constitutional frameworks that protect minority rights while enabling majority decision-making. Explain proportional representation, Princess Lirelei said. Despite her obvious internal conflict, her scientific mind was clearly engaged with the problem. Each species gets representation based on their population and their contribution to the cooperative, Marcus replied. But certain fundamental rights can't be voted away regardless of majority opinion. Life, liberty, self-determination, these are protected for everyone. Ambassador Whisperwind's form shimmered with interest. And if one species tries to dominate the others? That's where the constitutional framework comes in. You create checks and balances. No single species can control more than a certain percentage of the governing council. Decisions affecting the fundamental rights of any species require supermajorities, and there are independent judicial bodies to resolve disputes. Coordinator Threx leaned back, his rocky features showing skepticism. It sounds ideal in theory, human, but what happens when there's a crisis? When quick decisions are needed? Democratic processes are slow. Princess Lirelei spoke before Marcus could respond. That's exactly what my father would say. He believes that efficiency requires absolute authority, that consultation leads to paralysis. But that's not what we've seen in practice, Marcus countered. During Earth's colonial expansion, our most successful settlements were the ones that developed strong local governance. When pirates attacked the Centauri colonies, the democratic response was faster and more effective than anything a distant bureaucracy could have managed. Why? Asked Elder Crystallis. Because the people making decisions were the ones who would live with the consequences. They had skin in the game. When you're fighting for your own home, your own family, your own chosen way of life, you fight harder than when you're following orders from someone who's never been to your world. Marcus could see he was making an impression, but he also noticed Princess Lirelei checking her communicator again. Time was running out. Princess, he said urgently, what would it take to set up a pilot program? Something small enough that it wouldn't threaten Imperial stability, but real enough to test these principles. The entire Imperial system is built on the premise that central control is necessary for stability, she replied. Any deviation from that principle, no matter how small, would be seen as a fundamental threat. Then we make it look like something else, suggested Coordinator Threx. His people were miners. They understood the value of finding alternative approaches when the direct route was blocked. What do you mean? Princess Lirelei asked. We call it an efficiency improvement initiative. Frame it as a new management structure designed to increase productivity and reduce administrative overhead. Marcus felt a spark of hope. That could work. You're not challenging Imperial authority. You're developing better ways to serve Imperial needs. Ambassador Whisperwind joined the discussion. My people are experts at atmospheric management. What if we proposed a joint environmental restoration project? Multiple species working together to repair damaged ecosystems could serve as a cover for developing cooperative governance structures. Elder Crystallis's crystalline body resonated with excitement, and we could position it as a research initiative into optimal resource allocation. The Empire is always interested in improving efficiency. Princess Lyra Lee was quiet for several minutes, processing the possibilities. Marcus could see her weighing the risks against the potential benefits, trying to find a path that might honor her brother's memory without destroying her own future. There would have to be safeguards, she said finally, ways to demonstrate loyalty to the Empire while testing these new approaches. And it would need to show concrete benefits, increased productivity, reduced administrative costs, improved stability. Can you deliver that? Marcus asked the assembled representatives. My people are some of the finest engineers in the galaxy, Elder Crystallis replied. Given the freedom to innovate rather than simply implement imperial designs, we could increase construction efficiency by at least 40%. Our atmospheric management could restore depleted agricultural zones that the Empire has written off as permanent losses, added Whisperwind, and our mining operations could extract rare elements that Imperial techniques can't reach, Coordinator Threx concluded. We know our worlds better than any external authority. Marcus felt the pieces falling into place. Princess, what if you proposed a limited autonomy zone as an economic development experiment? 3 species, 1 planet, 1 year to prove that cooperative governance can deliver better results than traditional imperial management. And if it fails? Then you've gathered valuable data about why imperial methods are superior. Either way, the Empire learned something useful. Princess Lirelai stood and walked to the chamber's crystal window, looking out at the imperial forces that surrounded the settlement. Marcus could see her reflection in the transparent wall, and the conflict written across her features. There would be conditions, she said without turning around. Imperial oversight, regular reports, predetermined metrics for success. And if there's any sign of actual rebellion, you shut it down immediately, Marcus finished. But Princess, if it works, if these species can prove that cooperation is more effective than coercion, what then? Then my brother's death will have meant something. The words were spoken so quietly that Marcus almost missed them. When Princess Lyra Lee turned back to face the group, he could see tears in her star-like eyes. Very well, she said, her voice steady despite her emotional state. I will propose a limited autonomy economic development zone to the Imperial Council. 1 planet, 3 species, 1 year. But understand this, if this experiment fails, if there's any violence or actual rebellion, I will personally order the orbital bombardment of every settlement involved. Elder Crystallis stood and bowed formally. Your Highness, we understand the risk you are taking. We swear by the resonance of our ancestors that we will prove worthy of this trust. Don't swear to me, Princess Lyrelai replied. Swear to the thousands of beings whose lives depend on making this work. Marcus felt a mix of hope and terror as the implications sank in. They had just committed to proving that human ideals of freedom and cooperation could work in an alien context. The stakes couldn't be higher. Success might begin the transformation of galactic civilization, while failure would certainly doom humanity to isolation or worse. Princess, he said, there's one more thing. If this experiment is going to work, it needs human input. Someone who understands democratic principles and can help implement them. What are you suggesting? Let me stay. Let my crew participate in this project. We can provide technical assistance, share our experience with cooperative governance, and serve as liaisons between the autonomous zone and humanity. Princess Lyrelai studied him for a long moment. You would risk your life and the lives of your crew for beings you've known for less than a day? Marcus thought of his crew back on the ship, of Earth, of all the human colonies that might face Asterian wrath if this went wrong, but he also thought of the crystal city around them, of Ambassador Whisperwind's gentle wisdom, of Elder Crystallis's passionate hope for something better. That's what humans do, he said simply. We take risks for people we believe in. For the first time since they'd met, Princess Lyrelai smiled at him with something approaching warmth. Yes, she said. I'm beginning to understand that about your species. She activated her communicator and began speaking in rapid Asterian to her military commanders. Marcus couldn't understand the words, but he could see the shock on the faces of her guards as she issued what must have been completely unprecedented orders. 1 year later, Marcus stood in the same crystal chamber where they had planned their impossible experiment. But everything had changed. The view from the window now showed not just the original Cathera settlement, but a sprawling cooperative city where 7 different species lived and worked together in harmony. The transformation had not been easy. There had been setbacks, conflicts, and moments when the entire project seemed doomed to failure. The Zephyrians' weather management had initially conflicted with the mining operations of Coordinator Threx's people. The agricultural cooperatives had clashed with industrial development plans. Cultural misunderstandings had led to weeks of tense negotiations, but they had worked through each challenge, developing the democratic institutions and constitutional frameworks that Marcus had promised were possible. The Cooperative Council now included representatives from 12 species, with a judicial system that had successfully mediated over 200 disputes without a single case of violence. Princess Lyrelai entered the chamber, but she looked different now. The imperial regalia was gone, replaced by simpler clothes that reflected her new role as the first imperial observer to an autonomous zone. Her title was diplomatic, but Marcus knew the truth. She had essentially exiled herself from Asterian court to make this experiment possible. "The final reports are completed," she announced to the assembled council. "Production efficiency is up 60% across all sectors. Resource waste has been reduced by 40%. Population satisfaction indices are at levels we've never seen in imperial territories." Elder Crystallis's form chimed with satisfaction. "And more importantly, we've proven that different species can work together as equals without descending into chaos." The Imperial Council received those reports yesterday, Princess Lyrelai continued. The response was mixed. Marcus felt his stomach tighten.
Mixed how?
Half the council wants to expand the experiment to other worlds. They see the economic benefits and want to replicate them across the empire. She paused, and Marcus could see the tension in her posture. The other half sees exactly what my father feared, proof that imperial control is unnecessary. They view this as an existential threat to Asterian dominance. Ambassador Whisperwind shimmered with concern.
What was the final decision?
There was no final decision. The council is deadlocked, which means the matter goes to my father for resolution. Princess Lyrelai met Marcus's eyes. He's coming here personally to evaluate the situation. The words sent a chill through the chamber. Emperor Valdex was not known for his flexibility or mercy. His reputation for dealing with challenges to imperial authority was legendary and terrifying. "When?" Marcus asked. "His ship will arrive tomorrow." Coordinator Threx's rocky features showed determination. "Then we show him what we've built. We demonstrate that cooperation makes the empire stronger, not weaker." "You don't understand," Princess Lyrelai said quietly. "My father doesn't see strength in diversity. He sees weakness. To him, the fact that this experiment succeeded is proof that imperial control was never necessary, which means everything he's built his life on is a lie." Marcus stood and walked to the window, looking out over the thriving cooperative city. In the distance, he could see human children playing with young Kithera, their laughter creating harmonious music with the crystal architecture. Dr. Kim was working with Zephyrian atmospheric specialists to develop new terraforming techniques. Lieutenant Torres had become an expert in interspecies conflict resolution. His crew had found their place in this new world, but Marcus knew their safety hung by the thinnest of threads. "Princess," he said, turning back to face her, "what would convince your father that this isn't a threat to the Empire?" "Nothing," she replied bluntly. "He's made up his mind. The only question is whether he'll settle for destroying the settlement or whether he'll use it as justification for a broader campaign against human influence throughout the galaxy." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. Not just the cooperative zones, but Earth itself could become a target. Everything they had worked for could trigger the very conflict they'd been trying to prevent. "There has to be another way," Elder Crystallis said, his crystalline voice resonating with desperate hope. "There is," Princess Lyrelai replied, but her tone suggested she didn't like the solution. "I could dissolve the autonomous zone voluntarily, return to traditional imperial management, claim the experiment was a failure, and recommend against any future attempts at cooperative governance." "No." The word came from Marcus with surprising force. "We don't give up. We don't surrender what we've built here." "Then what do you propose, human?" Coordinator Threx asked. "We cannot fight the Imperial fleet. We have no weapons capable of threatening Asterian ships. Marcus thought about his species' history, about all the times humans had faced impossible odds and found unexpected solutions, not through superior firepower but through superior will and creative thinking. "We don't fight them," he said slowly. "We convince them." "Convince them how?" Ambassador Whisperwind asked. "By showing them something they've never seen before. By demonstrating that strength comes from unity, not domination." Princess Lyrelei shook her head. "My father has seen the reports. He knows about the productivity increases, the efficiency improvements, the reduced administrative costs. None of that matters to him, because we're showing him numbers on a screen. We need to show him something real, something that proves beyond doubt that this isn't a threat to the Empire. It's the Empire's greatest opportunity for growth." Marcus turned to address the full council. "How many Imperial citizens are unhappy with their current situations? How many species have been classified as subject peoples and dream of something better? How many worlds could benefit from the cooperative techniques we've developed here?" Elder Crystallis began to understand. "You're suggesting we demonstrate scalability, show that this isn't just a local anomaly but a reproducible model." "Exactly. But more than that, we show them that humans aren't trying to destroy Asterian civilization. We're trying to help it evolve into something greater." "How?" Princess Lyrelei asked. Marcus smiled, feeling the pieces of a plan falling into place. "By offering to share everything we've learned. By proposing a partnership between Earth and the Asterian Empire to develop cooperative governance models across the galaxy. My father would never accept subordinating Imperial authority to human ideas. Then we don't frame it as subordination. We frame it as leadership. The Asterian Empire becomes the first galactic civilization to master truly efficient governance. Instead of ruling through fear, you rule through inspiration. Instead of controlling subject species, you lead allied civilizations." Ambassador Whisperwind shimmered with excitement. "A galaxy where the strongest species is strong because it helps others become strong." "It could work," Coordinator Threx admitted. "My people have always respected strength, but we respect wisdom more. An empire that showed wisdom instead of just power would command genuine loyalty." Princess Lyrelei was quiet for a long time, processing the implications. "You're asking my father to transform 10,000 years of Asterian civilization, to abandon everything that made us the dominant species in this region of space." "I'm asking him to become something greater than dominant," Marcus replied. "I'm asking him to become legendary. The Emperor who chose greatness over mere power. And if he refuses," Marcus met her eyes steadily, "then we've shown that humans are exactly what he fears. Beings whose ideas are so compelling that even his own daughter chose them over Imperial authority." The princess stiffened at his words, but Marcus continued before she could respond. "Princess, you've already made your choice. You've spent a year helping us prove that cooperation works better than coercion. You can't go back to believing in Imperial dominance now that you've seen the alternative." "You're right," she said quietly. "I can't go back. My brother died believing in this vision, and I've lived to see it become reality. Whatever happens tomorrow, I won't betray that." Elder Crystallis chimed with harmonious resonance. "Then we stand together, all of us. Human and Asterian, Cathera and Zephyrian. All the species that have found hope in this place. Against the most powerful military force in this region of the galaxy," Coordinator Threx pointed out. "David faced Goliath with nothing but a sling and a stone," Marcus replied. "Sometimes the smallest gesture can change everything." "And sometimes," Princess Lyrelei added with a sad smile, "David gets crushed by superior force. But you're right about one thing, Marcus. Some things are worth the risk." As the council meeting ended and the representatives dispersed to prepare for the Emperor's arrival, Marcus found himself alone with Princess Lyrelei. She stood at the crystal window looking out over the city they had built together. "Do you really believe we can convince him?" she asked. "I believe we have to try," Marcus replied. "Because the alternative isn't just failure. It's the death of hope for billions of beings across the galaxy." "My brother would have liked you," she said softly. "He always believed that the universe was full of possibilities even when everyone else saw only limitations. He was right. And tomorrow we're going to prove it."